Welcome back, everybody, to another Buck Live. It is Wednesday, January 26th, 2022. Thank you for joining us today. I hope everybody's doing well today. It is Bell Let's Talk. So just for everybody out there that needs any sort of support or needs to talk about things, mental health is an extremely important thing that we need to never forget about and just to continue to push the conversation further. So just want everybody to be aware of that and just have that on the forefront, just to say. It's been an exciting time at Buck Productions. It's award season. We're getting a lot of awards applications going. Real Screen Global 100 is just around the corner, as well as it's pitching season and writing season. So I hope everybody is preparing those pitches, preparing that written material, development slates, the whole deal, because it's an exciting time for us at Buck. Just if anybody in here in the chat wants to sort of like shout out some of the cool things that they've been up to this January, this 2022, to get their new year started, whether that's a New Year's resolution to get more done or a New Year's resolution to get less done. Maybe they rushed too much in 2021. I know I rushed a lot, but it's good to sort of take a sit back and just sort of like get some perspective on things. So looking forward to just 2022 and what more this year is going to bring. Without further ado, I'll introduce our guest for this evening, Mr. Jesse Ikeman. Jesse Ikeman is the Chief Creative Officer at Vortex Media, a boutique film and television studio. He has been in the media and entertainment business since 2000, and he directed and produced In Love by Christmas, which was on the Lifetime Network and Chorus Network, starring Yona Walsh, and most recently produced Heart of the Holidays for the Hallmark Channel, starring Vanessa Lenges. Jesse wrote and directed A Perfect Plan, starring William Forsythe, which was an official selection at the Canadian Feature Film Festival, and produced When Jews Were Funny, which was the winner of TIFF 2013's Best Canadian Feature Film, and was named to TIFF's year-end Canada Top 10 list as one of the 10 best Canadian films of the year. Well, I think without further ado, let's bring Mr. Ikeman into the Buck live stream. The awkward moment of smiling before somebody enters. And then it's here. Hey, how's it going, man?
Hello. How are you? Good.
I don't even think my AirPods were on there. That whole time I had my AirPods in.
You guys do an amazing job over at Buck. I've been so impressed with just everything you do at your channel. It's super cool. So nice to meet you.
Yeah, man, nice to meet you too. And throw it right back to you guys all at Vortex. You guys are crushing it on every sort of division of how you can crush it.
Yeah, it's been a busy year.
Yeah, already off to a busy year. How are you, sir?
Doing great. I'm actually we're actually filming a movie right now, and so just stepped off to do this with you guys, which is amazing. And it's been a pretty interesting year and a bit since this whole mess of a world started. But yeah, it's been good. Thank you.
Nice, man. Well, I guess obviously keeping busy with work is one way of keeping busy during COVID, but I guess what have you been up to in your spare time to keep busy during COVID?
I don't think baking bread counts. That fad passed. Just catching up on movies where I can, to be honest. There's a lot to catch up on. So just I don't know what everybody else does. Sitting a lot of time in one's kitchen. Put it that way.
That's cool. Any newsworthy items to sort of get the year started for 2022?
Yeah, well, the movie we're making right now is called The End of Sex.
Okay.
It's this pretty cool movie being directed by Sean Garrity, which we're very excited about. That's just been keeping us all very very busy. It's an indie film, indie comedy, a lot of fun. So that's been the work of the day.
Oh, beautiful. In regards to any blogs, television shows, movies, books that you've been watching or reading, do you have anything new that you've sort of stumbled upon that's been inspiring for you?
Yeah, actually, yes. There was a book, and it was recommended actually by Brad Bird, and it was called The Art of Dramatic Writing by Lajos Igri, if I'm pronouncing that correctly. Lajos Egri. It's an absolutely unbelievable book. The reason why I picked it up actually is because he said it was his favorite book I mean, and that guy's a genius, but he said it was his favorite book on dramatic writing. And I obviously went out and bought the book immediately, and very, very insightful book. I would highly recommend it to anybody who who wants to pick up who's interested in writing and the craft. That is a truly amazing book that I had never heard of, and just recently heard about it on a podcast that he was on.
Nice. That's awesome. The Art of Dramatic Writing, for everybody listening in, a good resource for, I guess, that would be more in the narrative side of writing something, and for a feature or series, or
you know what, I think it really applies, I think, to any facet of the film business, whether you're a creative and you're a writer, or you're a director, or even if you're an actor. It talks about theme, talks about character, it talks about just the journey that any story has to tell, and the themes are universal. So it's a pretty cool book.
Nice. I'm just gonna go for it. All-time favorite movie, Jesse.
Oh, geez. Yeah, Superman. The original.
Okay, let's take a rewind. Take a few steps back. How did you get into filmmaking?
Well, the journey began in 2000. I was a business school major, and I was just looking for a job, and I was calling around, and I was actually selling knives at the time. So I had used the skills that one has when you're a knife salesman, and you're always asking for references and who you can sell more knives to. Anyways, I just applied that theory to looking for a job, and I landed up networking and landed up at Alliance Atlantis, which is where my first job was, in their television production department, working on tax credits. So the first job I ever had was very much in the business of Canadian film.
Very cool. And dealing with tax credits. So, I mean, literally setting you up for your producer role that you later come to play.
Yeah, it was a tremendous education in the way the business works, and I especially the Canadian business, because anybody who is in the business of making movies in Canada has to be, especially if they're a producer, familiar with how the incentives work in Canada, and that fundamentally comes down to tax credits, depending on which province that you live in. But every province has some kind of rebate or tax incentive, and so just that knowledge and learning how that whole system worked right out of the gate, even though I had no idea what a grip was, no idea what a gaffer was. They would give you the budget and say, go get us the tax credits. And of course, they were just numbers and names on a spreadsheet. Hadn't actually had a real film education, but from business school, the numbers made sense. But what the numbers actually meant, I still had no idea.
Right. So you just went straight into Alliance Atlantis. You didn't go to film school.
No, I went to Western. I did their business program. I think the only film education I really had was a film course, which was like the theory of film, and you're watching black and white cinema. But I'd always loved movies, and my real film education came from making a short film. And a friend of mine called me up while I was at Alliance Atlantis and said, "Hey, let's make a short film." And it was supposed to be $10,000, and it wasn't. It was $30,000. But we hired Patrick McKenna, and that was really cool. And, I remember negotiating with his agent at the time, and it was the first time I'd ever done that. And it was the act of doing it, and actually, making your own movie. And we hired some people who obviously knew what they were doing, and who knew more about what they were doing than I certainly did at the time. And I landed up breaking a dolly. So, it was a great experience. I number one lesson: don't touch the dolly.
In regards to, I guess, not having a formal, education in film school yet, you have garnered and created and curated quite your own content in regards to a resource for people to learn about filmmaking and learn about marketing films and learning about, well, other people's journeys throughout the industry as well. The Business of Film podcast is something I definitely want to touch on, maybe just a little bit here and then a little bit later, but something that I just like from my own experience of doing live streams as a means to ask questions and learn more from other people's journeys throughout this industry. Do you think that the 10,000 hour rule is relevant and reasonable?
Um, do I think it's relevant and reasonable? I think it's yes, I do. I think it's relevant and reasonable, but I really think it's just a metaphor for doing the work.
Right.
Continually doing the work. I mean, if you're a writer and your craft is writing, you need to sit down and write
Right.
every day. If your craft is directing, you need to find a way to direct and get behind the camera. Now, of course, you can do that. It wasn't always that way when I started doing the Business of Film podcast, which was almost a decade ago now. But yeah, absolutely. I believe it's more of a metaphor than anything else, just to sit down and do the work.
Right. And if you want to spend 10,000 hours being a podcast host, that is the same sort of deal as well.
Yeah, I didn't. I don't think I got to 10,000 hours. I got to 83.
The consistency is something though, and you do learn a lot in the process as well. I mean, it isn't as specific as writing, directing, producing. It's not those things, but by talking about those things, I would imagine it still contributes to that 10,000 hour amount or allotment.
Well, the great thing about doing really any podcast, but specifically when I was doing the Business of Film podcast, is I got the opportunity to talk to just some amazing people about what they did, and it was sort of my own secret way at the time to just learn from some pretty amazing people. And we had some amazing people. We've spoken to some of the best people in the business, both creatives and practitioners and technicians alike. And that really, for me, and I think for anybody who was listening, I mean, I was just approaching it from, hey, what can I learn from having these amazing conversations? And if I was learning something, then I'm hoping that the people who are coming along and listening to the Business of Film podcast would learn something equally valuable. And
Right.
and it's the information's evergreen, and you can find it on iTunes and just type in Business of Film, and there's everything from music rights, and we interviewed some of the top music lawyers in the business. So if you want to learn about music rights, if you want to learn about insurance, if you want to learn about what it's like to be the production manager on Pacific Rim, or to be a showrunner or a VFX supervisor, so much amazing information is there, and that's what the podcast was, and that's what the podcast is. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate enough to find one special one in particular that is a good one for a Buck connection and sort of a good leaping off point was with Mr. Jay Jolly.
Oh yeah. Okay. Yeah.
Who executive produced Wolf Cop alongside Buck, and as well, Vortex's hands are all over that as well.
Yes,
And,
the distributor.
yeah, I mean, and that was just a really, really cool one to listen to as well in regards to tax credits, dealing with Saskatchewan, dealing with Sineku, the whole distribution model, getting Canadian film scene.
It was a really cool model. I mean, 100%. I mean, hats off. I'll keep my hat on, but hats off to Jay Jolly and what he was doing. I mean, I remember that chat very well.
Awesome. Well, this is maybe a little bit of a deeper question. Potentially, you could take a tangent anywhere you want to go with this one, but how has filmmaking been an incredible outlet for you to help with your own self-expression and cooperative collaboration?
That's a mouthful. I think that the reason ultimately that I want to make movies is because it's very different than I think being at any kind of a regular day job. There's very little that compares to making a movie. And the great thing about making a movie, any movie, is that any and every movie that you make is different. I mean, the fundamentals are all the same, and the way you put a movie together and finance a movie, even though they've changed over the years, really what's changed is the ratio of how much money goes into a movie, but the structures are all fundamentally the same for the most part.
Right.
And so you get to play both in the financing world, and you get to play in the creative world, and you get to work with some amazing people. And so I think the short answer to that question is that it just provides an opportunity to work with great people. Day job, even though it's fundamentally the same, you're making movies, it's always different, and
Right.
and that's exciting.
Do you prefer producing or directing?
Hard question. I like them both. I love them both, and they're both very unique and different challenges. I think I respect the job more of a producer. I respect the job more producing having directed, put it that way. I think there's so much that a producer could learn the same way, when an actor directs, it's different because they have that experience of having been in front of the camera, so an actor can relate to it differently and talk to their actors. When an actor becomes a director, which happens a lot, they have a different way of talking to their actors. So producing now, having been a director, I relate to the job differently because I just understand it better. I understand what the director is going through. I can relate to that job. It's not all about the camera has to go off at a certain time anymore. For me, I look at the job a lot more holistically, I guess, than I ever did. But there are two very different right brain, left brain operations. Super fun, both jobs equally.
Well, I think it's time we can maybe go through a little bit of what you do at Vortex and what sort of the day-to-day is like there, and maybe we can touch on some of the projects that you've pushed through the door in the past. So I guess just to start off, how did things start for you at Vortex?
Well, Vortex is it's a partnership between myself and the CEO is Justin Rebello, formerly from E1, and Bill Marks, who is really the founder of the company and chairman of the company. And what's unique about the company is that we're kind of set up a little differently than other companies in the space because we have a fully integrated distribution operation in Canada with an amazing distribution team, and the team's putting out 4 to 5 movies a month across Canada. Obviously, things have changed now in terms of, but we're getting back to normal, getting movies in theaters again. So it's really exciting for me to watch what the amazing distribution team at Vortex is able to do to get movies in front of audiences again. My job is more on the production side of Vortex, specifically the IP that we're developing in-house, and we've got a pretty incredible team of in-house line producers and development executives, and we're constantly looking for new material to make, like any production company, and you would know that.
Yes.
But we play in 3 main spaces. We do independent film. We did a project called Anything for Jackson last year, which premiered on Shudder, and that was a really cool indie horror genre movie. We do a lot of Christmas movies, which have traditionally for us played on both Hallmark and Lifetime. We also do romance movies, and so there's this wonderful freedom to be able to go between and make product for linear broadcasters and SVOD players and AVOD players in the space. And my job is just to really work with everybody on our team. And we have a lot of people. And so we're working with our team to develop stuff for all 3 of those verticals. And we're just trying to make a lot of movies and get them out there. But it's no different than what you guys do over at Buck. It's a hard job, right? You know as well as anybody, getting any movie made is challenging. But it's only because you've got great people working with you every day that you're able to do anything, really, whether you're one person or you're 10 people.
Nice. Can you tell me a little bit about a film that you did called When Jews Were Funny?
Yeah, that was a lightning in a bottle movie. That was I don't think we expected it was going to have, I think, some of the appeal that it did have at the time. What we certainly didn't know was directed, and it was the idea of Alan Zweig, who's an amazing director, and he came into the office one day, and this was with at the time I was working with a business partner. His name was Jeff Glickman, and we had this company called Sudden Storm. He came into the office one day, and then Jeff came upstairs and said, I just met with this filmmaker, and we should make this movie, and it's called When Jews Were Funny. And then we just started reaching out to all the old comedians, and and all the new ones, Howie Mandel and Shecky Green and Norm Crosby, and just all these amazing comedians. And then we went on the road show. The team went on the road show. They went and they interviewed all these amazing comedians, and I really have to hand it to Alan and our editor for editing what was, there must have been hundreds of hours of footage that got edited down to about 90 minutes. And what's crazy about that movie, and what I'm super proud of, is that movie actually won Best Canadian Feature Film at the Toronto Film Festival, even though it was a documentary. But you know, the credit goes to Alan, in spades, because he's just he's the best. You know, a unique character with a clear vision. And I'll be honest, I didn't always understand it, but it was funny. And anybody who hasn't seen the movie and wants to laugh when Jews were funny, it's still funny.
Well, that's an interesting sort of note to follow, though. I mean, in regards to producing and having to have that trust in your director that you're working with, and sort of the vision that they have, and I guess just the execution of that, and making sure that it does sort of work for an audience potentially. So I guess through some of the films that we have that we posted earlier, like A Perfect Plan, A Perfect Match, Riverfront Romance, Learning to Love Again, Cabin Connection, Heart of the Holidays. I guess a good question to ask here would have been some of the most significant memories for you over the span of making those films, and sort of some of the moments that have, I guess, been those moments where maybe you had to take a step, you had to take a risk, I guess.
You know, all those movies, by the way, you know, they're all Christmas movies and romance movies for the most part. But the way we think about the movies is really the thing that I'm most proud of, because all those movies, we think about them, our entire team of people, which those movies that you listed, the team was led by this amazing in-house producer that we have. His name is Christopher Giroux, and that guy just leaves his blood and his sweat on the
He brought a lot
floor.
of blood from Rabid Dog, right? He brought all.
Yeah, well, yeah, he's done. I mean, his career moved. He started in horrors, and now he's in romance. I don't get it, but I get one thing, and that's his passion, and everybody on the team that we had working on all those movies, because we think about these movies, which are traditionally movies that, you know, they would play on either a linear broadcaster or a streamer, but we think about them as movies, and that's the important part. It's our philosophy, and it's the thing that I think is the most critical. We want to give our directors the ability and freedom to make, you know, their kind of movie. We want to just bring our passion as filmmakers into making every one of these movies that we make, whether it's, you know, for any broadcaster. And it's, I don't know, at the end of the day, it's just, you know, it's you and a hammer, and it's 2 a.m. and the nail, you know, is sticking out, and you got to go over there and you got to hammer the nail. And you know, we're just a scrappy group of filmmakers sometimes. And at the end of the day, I think it's not necessarily one particular memory, although, you know, sometimes you got to go in and you got to build a tiki bar, you know, from scratch. Because the tiki bar isn't there. So where do you find a tiki bar? It's everything, right? And it's that, I don't know, it's that scrappiness, that boutique kind of flavor that we have as just a group of filmmakers that want to go out and make movies. I mean, that's what it's all about. So I don't know. I don't think I really gave you like a story of something crazy. Crazy that happened, but I don't know. I mean, every movie's got its challenges.
It was a great shout out to Mr. Christopher Giroux, who I was introduced to after working, interning on a film in Buffalo with Mr. Greg Lamberson, a horror director down there, and he was like, "You got to check out Chris Giroux and everything he's doing." So shout out to Mr. Giroux, and as well to all the scrappy filmmakers at Vortex for killing it, and, you know, staying, I guess, committed to the passion. And, you know, we're here to make movies, not just, yeah. I love that. I think my next question, I mean, I'd love to get into the business of film podcast and everything there. So I guess just to jump right on in, how did you start it? How did you get this podcast started, and what was your process of getting it started?
It was back in 2011 or 12 when we started. I was just listening to a lot of podcasts, and it wasn't very prevalent at the time. Like, just podcasting it was very nascent. And so it was trying to figure out, okay, how do you do it? And then calling around every week. It was, going back to that 10,000 hour thing, every week it's about finding, okay, who's that next person that I can call, whether it's a friend or a colleague or network to get onto the podcast. But the biggest challenge of doing any podcast, and specifically that podcast at the time, was finding people week after week. And doing the podcast itself was actually the best part. Like when you got to interview somebody, it's the editing that kills you. You got to edit, and you got to do the sound work, and then you got to post it, and you got to build the web page, because at the time, in order to post it, it had to go onto a web page. And so, the podcast would take an hour, but the editing after each one, the prep and the post on the podcast was what really took all the time. But yeah, I mean, I don't know whether there's anything specific to the podcast itself in terms of like the content that you were interested in, or just the process of making it.
Well, I guess what you originally set out to do was called the Business of Film podcast, and that's what you have created with over 80 guests. So I guess that original onset was like, I want to make a podcast learning about the business of film.
Oh yeah. The thing that I'm really passionate about is it's the thing I could probably talk about for just hours and hours and hours, is actually the mechanics of how you make a movie. So that just general interest is sort of what was the initial idea of the Business Film podcast, was just to take my own personal passion for financing and making movies and kind of turn that into conversations that we could have with guests. And that's really it. It was that simple. And so I think we did it. I think we covered just so much ground, and most of it is evergreen, which is anybody who's listening to this or see this later, and they have any question about the business of film, like the answer is there, and that was the goal. But the interesting thing was, of course, having these really cool conversations with people and hearing their stories, because that's what it's all about.
It is, yeah. It's the interaction, the collaboration there. I'm curious, in regards to your career and in film, and sort of each part of the process that you go through as a producer and a director, are there any, I guess, points along the way that are often overlooked when creating a budget, or sort of, I mean, I've heard a lot in the Business of Film podcast that marketing and distribution and having some money set aside for that, a lot of feature film budgets don't have that, and that's a big problem why we don't have a lot of Canadian films being seen. But I'm curious, is there any, I guess, one singular part of the process where you feel like is often overlooked in your experience and takes like it's kind of like one of those repeat things that keep having, is like, oh, we should spend more time thinking about that in prep, or it is prep, we overlook prep, we rush prep, I don't know, stuff like that.
Yeah, I think the episode that you're talking about, and I remember that episode, it was a guy, I forget his name now, but he wrote a book, and it was specifically, and I remember this point very clearly, because I think it's more applicable today than when we did the podcast, and that is understanding who your audience is going to be and how you're going to market your movie at the end. Because look, anybody can make a movie these days. The reality is how to get your movie seen. Like that's really the hardest part of the game right now, is how do you get your movie seen? There's so much content. There's so much competition for content. Even though it feels like there's limited shelf space, the reality is there isn't limited shelf space. There is a limit on how many platforms, even though there are more platforms than there have ever been, those platforms are pushing a lot of their own content. They're all creating their own content. So if you're an independent filmmaker and you're out there and the dream is to get your movie made and get it to Sundance or Toronto and have a big acquisition, well, you're still competing against every other movie that's been made, with every other filmmaker that has a passion project. And by the way, most of those filmmakers that have passion projects are probably stars who, and so these film festivals, the big ones, are littered with great movies from very, very talented stars, their passion projects, or high-end directors, their projects. And so if you're kind of an independent producer and you're looking for that breakout, that's great, but the conversation needs to happen at the very beginning. What are the expectations? How are you going to get your movie seen? What's the plan if you aren't one of the 3% or 5% at a film festival that doesn't get picked up for distribution? How do you get your movie seen then? Because the worst thing that I think any filmmaker can do is just go make the movie,
Right.
but then it sits on a shelf, right?
Right.
And that happens a lot, and it happens more often than people listen. Even my first film, it kind of happened to me too. My first short film, my first film, getting it out into the market and getting it seen, the most important thing you can answer before you start putting your production together.
Right.
Because there's nothing more disheartening than spending years making your movie and nobody's seeing it, right? You want your movie to be seen in whatever fashion that is. And by the way, that doesn't have to be like 4 million eyeballs on Netflix. That could just be, okay, great, we're going to have a plan to do a limited release strategy in maybe a few theaters. Maybe there's a broadcaster that you can get a pre-sale with, so you know where the end product is going to land before you start, and then you can start reverse engineering it. There's another great there's another great trick, not my trick, but I'll share it here because I think it's one of the best analogies for how to get a movie made. And this was from Tony Gilroy. Was it Tony Gilroy or his brother? It was one of the Gilroys. And he basically said, if you can cast a star, and this applies, by the way, at any level. But if you can, when I say star, there's a wide range in that. It doesn't have to be Brad Pitt. Just right. You cast a star. You cast somebody that has some value in the marketplace, and if you can and that star has some value. If you make your movie for less than what the value of that star is, now of course they're working with people like Jake Gyllenhaal and very, very high level talent, but still the analogy I think holds true. Cast it with an eye towards what the value of that cast is worth in the marketplace. Make your movie for less. And that conversation usually happens with sales agents, and it happens at the very beginning. So to go back to the beginning of your question, the answer is start with the sales agent, start with the distributor, start with the release strategy, get that information from the people who are going to be bringing your project to market. Right. Put a value on the product, reverse engineer the budget. Don't make a budget don't spend $7 million if your movie's only worth $6 million. Spend $5 million, right? Don't spend $1 million if it's only worth $500,000. Don't spend $300,000 if your movie's only worth $100,000. And by the way, this always works. Yeah. It doesn't matter whether you're making $1 million movie or a $5 million movie. It's the same thing, whether it's an SVOD movie, a made-for-TV movie, or a theatrical movie. It's the same formula. I don't know. You got me talking there. You got me talking. Oh, geez. Okay, that's dangerous. It's dangerous.
Start with the end and then reverse engineer it, basically.
See, I can talk forever about this.
No, good. Thank you for that answer. That was wonderful, Jesse. Can you talk about what you're currently working on? I think you did, but just to reiterate what you're currently working on.
We're working on an independent comedy again right now. We're going to be working on a thriller. That's the next project that we're going to be making, which I'm happy to say we'll be making with another really amazing collaborator and filmmaker in the industry here in Canada. His name is Pasha Patricky, who you might know, and we're going to be doing a project with him, and so we're really excited about that.
Is it a passion or a Pasha project?
I think it's both.
Nice. And is he slated into DP as well, or is he just directing this one?
No, he'll be directing this one. In fact, it'll be he'll be directing it. More to follow.
Nice. I worked with Pasha on a film called Spare Parts a few years ago.
Oh, did you? Okay, yeah.
Up in Sudbury, I was one of his helping out with camera and lighting on that one, so that was a good time.
Oh, great. Okay, well, then you were also working with Emily, who we worked with on one of our projects, A Perfect Match. And so I believe Emily was kicking ass in that movie.
Absolutely. Everybody was. There was a lot of
Yes, that's a great movie.
I guess the next question I'd like to, go into a little bit, I mean, even though we've kind of established that what Vortex works on is primarily features, is maybe how you intend on potentially articulating yourself in different content formats. do you have a vision to potentially get into like series? Do you want to do more documentaries, or is feature the main focus for the future?
Well, I mean, for us as a company, I think we're really well positioned to do one-offs. It's what the market in large part is looking for right now. When you look at all the platforms, I mean, one of the things is that there is of course a race for content right now. I think it's the busiest the industry has ever been in, ever. And with all the platforms, everybody's looking for content, one-off movies, movies of the week, theatrical movies. Those are, I would say, faster to get made and sold as opposed to, say, independent series. Now, that's not to say we're not going to do independent series. We will, but there's a longer gestation with independent series, and it's also a slightly more, I don't want to say difficult because that's not really the right word, but there's a different kind of shelf space algorithm to series than there is to one-off movies and theatrical movies, whether it's a movie of the week or an independent feature. So they're different business models, and we're really set up to be able to move quickly in the independent film space and make a decent amount of indie film content during the year.
Got a good clip going. You're going to keep it going.
We're going to try.
Yeah. Inside
or die trying.
Die trying. Well, I mean,
maybe not.
Yeah, that's a romantic thought. Wanting to go a little bit inside the producer / director's mind a little bit, the process, the structure, the time management, everything. It sort of is all encompassing. But I guess just in a general sense, how would you define the way you work with others and your style?
Yeah, I think honestly, when I first started, there was definitely a need to when you're doing your own thing and you're one person, you're very hands-on in all facets. I mean, the amazing thing about Vortex and the people that we have, and I can honestly say this, is that everybody who works at the company is better at their job than I could ever be at that job. Right. And I think that's the hands down the most important part of this is that like as a company, honestly, the growth of the company is allowing people at the company to just follow their own passions, and then of course the company has its own trajectory, and together we're doing a good job of meeting the demands of the market, because that's what drives a lot of this. So I think for me, and I'm not sure if I'm answering your question, so you tell me if I'm answering your question. Am I answering your question?
For you, I get it. Yes.
Or have I already? I might have lost the thread there.
I feel like we're answering all the questions at once.
All the questions. You have a lot of questions.
What kinds of stories are you most passionate about telling? Like what aspects are I guess sort of your go-tos?
I think my personal passion certainly is look, I'm a producer. I just want to blow shit up. Yeah. I want to eat the craft truck and I want to blow shit up. That's what I want to do. But if I can't do that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to tell an awesome love story with a beautiful kiss at the end. And both of those give me a great deal of pleasure. And so I think, when it comes to the kinds of stories that we tell at our company, look, I can't tell you how many times people have either told me personally or we've heard from people who have worked with us that when you're working, especially in the romance category and the Christmas film space, those movies, they are so pleasurable for people to watch. And they're so amazing to hear feedback from people who see them and enjoy watching them. It's honestly one of the most amazing things, because it was a new market to me and to our company when we first got into it. Right. But the response has been incredible, almost to the point where I'm like, I'm not sure I want to do anything else because this is just so amazing. People love these movies. But on the same token, I am an indie filmmaker. Everybody at the company, we're all filmmakers at heart. And so it really is finding a blend. It's a blend behind doing some of these more endearing, heartwarming stories on one side, and really doing these cool indie projects like Anything for Jackson, which was, is a horror movie. I mean, so there's no one answer. I mean, they're all fun. They're all different. They all pose different challenges.
Hmm.
And I think going back to what I had said at the very beginning, that's actually what makes this game of making movies so much fun. Is sometimes you can, be next to the Christmas tree, and the next time, Yannick Bisson's head is going into, a meat grinder. Like, it's crazy.
Just so long as the food's good.
Yes, very important.
Yes,
Cupcakes, only cupcakes.
all the cupcakes. Do you have any, I guess, producer tips for our audience to potentially glean from anything you yourself wish you could have heard when you were first starting out?
The most important tip, and I've said this for years, but I'll repeat it here for anybody who wants it. The advice is free because it's not mine. It's from the late great producer Jake Eberts. Jake wrote a book called My Indecision Is Final. I had the amazing fortune of working with him. He ran, by the way, a Gold Crest, which produced Chariots of Fire back in the early 2000s. At my first job at Alliance Atlantis, he was doing a movie, and I was working on something business related, and I called him up one day and said, Mr. Roberts, can I talk with you? Can I just pick your brain for 20 minutes? And he gave me 20 minutes of his time. And the advice he gave me sticks with me to this very day. It's the best advice I ever got about being a producer. And it was basically, if you want to be a producer, you have to own the copyright. What that means is that if you're going to produce something, you need to fundamentally own and develop the underlying material that's going to eventually become the movie. When you control the copyright, a couple of very interesting things happen. You get to make a lot of the early and fundamental decisions that go towards answering questions like, how is your movie going to be financed? Who are you going to cast? Who are your partners going to be? Who's the director going to be? So I just, I think it's great advice. It's advice from the best, and I think it's germane to anybody who wants to be a producer.
In regards to it's Bell, let's talk and mental health and the producer and filmmaker lifestyle can sometimes be a little bit chaotic. The hours can stretch us pretty thin at times. What are some, I guess, strategies or techniques that you found just in collaborating with others and supporting just a positive workplace and a positive mental health workplace?
I think in our business is very stressful. There's a lot of long hours. I mean that's just the truth. It's a very challenging. It's a dynamic job, but it's super challenging. It's hard as a result of all the hours that filmmakers spend. One of the things that we did during the pandemic, and one of the things that we are constantly trying to do. And by the way, it's always difficult to do, but the goal still remains the same as to how do you reduce work hours on the floor when you're making a movie. And that's really the most important thing that you can strive to do. It's not always possible every day, but certainly the days that you can get those wins in and you can plan for and achieve the lower hour days on the whole, that's super important. For promoting just a healthy lifestyle. Having downtime, between projects is certainly very important for us as a company because we're trying to do quite a number of projects. So finding the right ebb and flow between producing one movie and say prepping another movie. So I think it's time at the end of the day. It's a lot of just figuring out how to allocate your time. And listen, burnout right now, especially myself, anybody, burnout's a problem because people work really hard. They're in their own house. Like it's hard for people, and I definitely appreciate that. When you sit, a lot of the times, a lot of people are sitting across, across from other people in their own household. So
Right.
and you're not out there talking to your colleagues in the same way that you were before. So yeah, I think in general, it's a hard business, the film business, and there are ways to do it, and I think we're all just trying to figure that out as we kind of move towards an environment where there can be more space in what was traditionally an industry that didn't give it.
Right. I love that answer. That's time and finding the balance. And
Yeah,
it's never just an easy how. It's just you got to find the way that works for you, I suppose. And it's nice to hear though from another person. Just it is tough. It is tough. But last week's guest Emma said just setting clear boundaries is key between your work and your life, and maybe after a certain time the phone goes off, stuff like that. But
I
as we
wish
know,
there was a way to actually do that. I still haven't figured that out. I got to talk to Emma.
yeah, I think this producer mindset is yes, the phone is always on. So it's like you just sometimes got to pick up. I guess it's those moment to moment. How important is this phone call?
Well, the funny thing is, it used to not really be an issue. To be honest with you, it was never really an issue until people got stuck in their house, in their homes. I think now it's become, I mean, or maybe it was always an issue we never really knew,
Right.
but it's certainly become at the forefront of everybody's mind, is creating that separation. So yeah, completely agree. Still trying to figure it out.
One day at a time. In regards to some shout-outs, we always like shout-outs on these Buck live streams. Do you have any shout-outs to mentors that have helped you along the way, sort of maybe given your career the catapult it needed?
Yeah, early on, there were a couple people who I think really helped my understanding of how to make of how to make a movie, and just the understanding of the business. I mean, when I was at Alliance Atlantis, it was, yeah, I mean, just want to go really way back. I mean, people like Peter Sussman, who started Alliance Atlantis, or Jan Peter Mayboom, who was the producer. I mean, now he produces very, very large movies, but at the time I was, able to work with him and Ken Finkelman on The Newsroom. And they, those two people, specifically, really did mentor me a lot in the mechanics of film. Manny Danilon, who's a line producer here in town, I had the opportunity to work with him once, and then he went, again, he does very, very large television series now, but including just recently The Expanse. But there's just a lot of really great people in the business that I've had the good fortune of learning from. So it's just being close to the people that have done it before, and watching other people do that job. That's what it's all about.
Yeah. I love it. I love it. Do you have any myths to debunk about being a producer director?
No myths, but I would say this: the difference between film and television is that in film, if you want to get your movie made, you can get it made. So, there's a lot of people out there who might be like, I want to be in the TV business, or I want to make a TV series. And the difference between TV and film, and I don't know if you can call this a myth, but I would say this is, a close approximation, is that in film, if you want to get your movie made, you can get it made. Right. TV is not the same thing. It's a very different kind of animal. So I would say anybody who is interested in film, there's a path to figure out how to get your movie made. But with TV, once that door closes, it's really hard to open it up again, because there really are gatekeepers in the TV business, but not so much in the film business.
Oh, interesting. That's some good little intel there. I'm enjoying. Well, Jesse, I mean, I don't have too many more questions for you. It's been a great time getting to converse with you on some of these topics, and really do appreciate your candor in answering all these questions that are coming your way. We always give our guests an opportunity to shout out anybody they'd like. So wanted to throw the ball to your court, and the stage is yours. The floor is yours, my good sir.
Honestly, I tip my hat to you, good sir. I think you guys are doing just one of the reasons I wanted to come on and spend this time with you was I've been watching what you guys have been doing. It's super cool. I mean, it's not easy to line up all the the live streams that you guys are doing, and everything you're doing is to benefit the community of people that are watching and that are just wanting to make movies. So thank you, and just I know a great deal of thanks to really everybody at Vortex Productions who do what they do day in, day out, who do just an incredible job. So really, our team at Vortex, that's who I thank really every day. But I thank you for inviting me on. Time flew by.
Absolutely. I didn't even, yeah. Well, shout out to all the great teams we get the fortunate opportunity to work with every day. I mean, that's really what it is all about. I mean, we get to work with awesome people. So Jesse, you're awesome. You're a rock star, man. Keep rocking it with Vortex. Can't wait to see what's next, my man.
Thank you so much. Super appreciate it.
Have a great night, eh?
You too. Okay, cheers.
Bye. Well, that was our Buck Live with Jesse Ikeman, everybody. Hope you enjoyed. Have a wonderful week, and we will see you next week on Buck Live. This is Jade Yurich, signing off.